Hello, good morning and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And as you know, as always, here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Over 19,000 COVID-19 infections, including some 150 doctors, the people at the forefront giving us rescue and leading us the way to salvation. Some among the 117 killed by the virus. Should the country continue with the fertile breeding ground activities like voter registration at a time of high increase in the infections, and as a minister loses his job for stepping out to inspect the registration while carrying the virus? But what is this controversy about deployment of military at this time and alleged deliberate attempt to disenfranchise a section of Ghanaians? The executive president, by the stroke of whose pen the entire nation is locked down, steps into the HR department to compel a workaholic Auditor General, Daniel Yao-Domelevo, to proceed on 123 days of accrued leave. And tongues wagging? Well, in the spirit of his friend, Martin Amidu, he issued an epistle yesterday about embarrassing audit findings, bad faith, and urged his HR manager, the president, to reconsider the action to protect the sanctity of the labor law and constitutional independence of his office. The response he gets this morning is leave days increased from 123 to 167. Where and how did the president err? We'll be back to deal with these vexed matters. I'm Samson Ladi Ayenini. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. As I get ready to welcome my guest, let me give you a brief take. And I title my take, "Don't Do Mere Conveyor Belt Journalism." Don't do mere conveyor belt journalism. Now, for a good number of journalists in this country, they seem to forget or don't get that training that the fact that someone else is supplying you information, whether or not that information is in a certain document, whether official or not, means that the journalist has no obligation to verify the contents of that document. So we are caught up in a time where we do a lot more of conveyor belt journalism. Some person throws a document at you. Once you can see there's some signature on it, sometimes it's not signed, it's not properly authenticated. And the journalist feels that once that document has the semblance of official documentation, they can go ahead and publish that document or the content of that document without caring to check and verify the content of the document. In fact, some go to the extent of listening to someone say something and simply think that for carrying the message of that person, that's all there is about it. If another person is hurt or thinks that what the other has said is not accurate or in any way hurts them, they should come forward and also give a reaction. No. You have a duty to check, to verify. And the Code of Conduct for Journalists requires you to double check. The code says where using straightforward means to procure that information becomes difficult, then you can use not straightforward means, including subterfuge, to procure the documentation. The conveyor belt journalism can be very costly to yourself, to your integrity, and to the organization you work for financially and its integrity. Give you an example. Kweku Baako just won a victory in the court on defamation. He decided to sue the person who spoke. Guess what? He had the right to sue the media platforms on which the utterances were made. It was his election. He elected his victims. You choose your victims as you find them. He elected the victims. So he decided to sue only Kennedy Japan and not the Sempa and Adom and Netu, Net3 platforms, the Netu TVs that carried that message and did the publication. Here is my point. Let us be extremely careful in simply carrying information just because we trust the person who is giving it or we have seen some document. We have the duty to double check. And once we discover, and sometimes we make errors, we are humans. Once we discover an error has been made, let's be bold enough and be firm to retract and apologize. And for those of you who read the article this week from two media platforms that suggested that some judges, a good number of the judges, including Supreme Court and Court of Appeal, had been taken to the charge for not declaring their assets. You would find that later the media entities deleted those articles, they retracted and apologized. That is what we ought to do once you discover you have done the wrong. And I disclose that I wrote to those media entities acting as a lawyer for one of those judges in the Supreme Court, Justice Samuel Malfo Sal. He had declared his assets even before he went to be vetted in Parliament. And yet the reportage was that he had not declared his assets. The fact that something has been put in charge does not mean that document that has gone to charge, when you use it, you may not be liable to defamation. Let's stop the conveyor belt journalism so that we don't put ourselves at risk and our media entities at risk. Thank you very much. This is my take. Now, let me introduce my guest for this morning. We will be dealing with a number of people on the show this morning, but we're starting right here in the studio with our regular guest, Abdul Malik Kweku Baako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. We have Nana Akomea, used to be very regular on this show. He is member MPP Communications Team and Managing Director, State Transport Company, the STC. He's a man that is championing the transformation at that place that is getting all the deserving applause. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile. Good morning, Samson. Now, on Zoom, I have Fifi Kwete, Fifi Fiavi Kwete. He's MP K2 South, former Deputy Finance Minister and Minister for Agri and Transport. Fifi Kwete also used to be very regular, but for a long time now, he's taking a bit of a back seat until recently. Welcome to the show, Fifi.
Thank you, Samson, and good morning to all your many viewers and listeners.
Great. We also have Dr. Srebo Kweko. He's the Director of Electoral Services, Electoral Commission of Ghana. And Professor Kweku Asare, Fellow Stephen Kweku Asare, popularly known as Azar. He is Fellow CDD Ghana and D&D Fellow for Public Law and Justice. Gentlemen, welcome to Newsfile.
Thank you, Samson.
All right. Okay, I'm sure my production will get you to brighten up your space a bit because it's a bit dark. So we'll deal with that. But thank you all so very much. So now, let's get to the business for this morning. And we will begin with the Electoral Commission's processes that has partly, you may say, led to someone losing their job because they stepped out while carrying COVID-19 and have lost their job as a result of that. They stepped out to inspect the process. Now, I'd like to start with Nana Akomea. First, straight to Carlos Ahinkra, the former Deputy Trade Minister. What do you make of what he has suffered as a result of what he did? The question now being raised is that the president should not even have given him the opportunity to resign, and after the resignation, he should actually be facing prosecution. And the MPP as a party, according to Occupy Ghana, must take steps to revoke his candidature and find somebody else to do that job.
Thank you, Samson. Let me wish our listeners a good morning, rainy Saturday morning. I haven't been here in a while. It's good to take part in your discussions once again. Yes, Honorable Carlos Ahinkra exercised a discretion wrongly, and he himself has admitted that he took a wrong decision under the circumstance, and he decided quite honorably that the best thing to do under the circumstance was to recuse himself from government. So he recognizes that he had been derelict in showing leadership at that point, that as a senior government employee, he needed to show leadership in enforcing the directive, not only from the president, but generally recognized directives to protect other people. And he was derelict in it. He has admitted it by offering his resignation. And so he has suffered the consequences. He has done the honorable thing. As for the president sacking him, I don't know what the legal ramifications are, but I would imagine that the employer would take that kind of step if it was appropriate, and if the employee refused to take that step himself or herself. I mean, something, if you had done something that brought the reputation of this institution, multimedia, into dispute, and you recognize that you've done something that brought this company into disrepute, and you thought the honorable thing to do to save the integrity of the company was to resign or recuse yourself from the company, and you took your resignation to Mr. Kwesi Chung, who I assume is your employer, I can't imagine Mr. Kwesi Chung saying to you that take your resignation away, I'm going to sack you. I would imagine that Mr. Kwesi Chung would exercise or consider exercising that prerogative to sack you if you refuse to do what is honorable. But if you yourself recognized that you hadn't acted in the best interest of the company, and you went to your employer to say, I admit what I have done is wrong, and I want to resign to save the company from any repercussions, your employer would hardly tell you that something, well, this is your letter, I refuse to accept it. I'm rather going to sack you. So I think his resignation is timely. He has done the right thing, and once he's offered it timely, in a timeously, the president had no option but to accept it. And all of us must also accept it in good faith. And that's what is done. As for subsequent sanctions, whether it's prosecution or the party taking further actions, well, the steering committee of the party is the body to take any further action.
What would you advise them to do if this matter came before them?
I would think that once the man has admitted responsibility and has himself taken steps to sanction himself, there is no further need for any other sanctions.
Okay, interesting. Kweku, so he uses an example. I don't think, if you believe that's the best example to use. In the first place, I am an independent contractor for this company. I am not an employee of Multimedia. Now, even if I were an employee of Multimedia, this is a private organization. This is not a public, institution. I am not the appointee of a president who is leading the charge and who has issued several, EIs by way of laws to seek to regulate the circumstance and prevent people from the risk of COVID-19. The president has given 13 different speeches stressing how he will not put anybody in harm's way. Should he be accepting a resignation from his minister who, knowing he carries the disease, still goes out to mingle with people in a crowd?
Well. See, the president, indeed, let me just make this point. If Carlos Ahinkra had not resigned within the time frame he resigned, I think he would have been dismissed.
Okay.
He chose the more, let's say, a softer option, because he would have been dismissed.
Okay.
No matter about that. Everything was clear that he had been irresponsible, highly irresponsible. I wouldn't say Carlos, as others were saying. He goes with it, he rhymes, But he's resigned. The president has accepted it. There are calls for further sanctions. Prosecution, let's take the first one. Was it the president who triggered the prosecution of those pastors or anybody else who violated the EI and had been tried and sentenced?
It's law enforcement.
Exactly, ma. Look, let's grow the institutions. If indeed the man has violated, and I think so, even though we have to be specific, that when it gets to the court scenario, you have to be very specific as to what offense he's committed and proceed on that in terms of the law.
Right.
Openly, I think something, he violated the EI. That's what I think. But if you're going to prosecute, you itemize what exactly does his conduct, what offense does it constitute, which section of the EI or whatever public health law and all those things. You specify. So you drive the prosecution on it. Otherwise, you could lose. You find him guilty in the court of public opinion easily. But in court of law, you have to be very, very specific relative to the legal regime that he might have violated. And I'm not good at those things. Yeah. But the point I'm making...
But you endorse what Occupy Ghana does. You say you are an occupier at heart.
Yes.
And you know people, good lawyers like Ace and Kuma is in Occupy Ghana.
Yes.
When they have said something, you know that they have a reason for saying it.
Yes, I agree.
And they have indicated a number of laws which have been breached.
Yes, that's why I'm saying that then the prosecutor agency, the investigative bodies must build a docket. Right. You know that. You investigate, you build a docket, and then you see what to do next. Perhaps, I don't know if this is the case, the Attorney General will have to give an advice or not. I'm not too sure about that. I didn't bother checking those things. But I'm saying that let the appropriate agencies trigger that option. You don't need the president to call the agencies and say, go prosecute him.
Don't we have precedents where the president, because of a high-profile matter, says, I have ordered the police to do ABC?
It's not investigation. We are talking prosecution. The president, like for instance, the Airbus thing, the president forwarded it to the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
That's right.
The allegations against 2 deputy chiefs of staff. He forwarded it to the CID. Okay? I am saying that he's done those things. What stops the police or what stops the investigative agencies on their own motion responding to the Occupy Ghana statement? Because the Occupy Ghana has given them some raw material to proceed on. But that's okay.
In respect of analysis number 12, what was the president's instruction to the police?
He gave it to the CID to investigate the allegations, or if you like, there is this thing, I've forgotten the exact word, but influence peddling,
right,
using his name by Mr. Nyantichi. He gave it to the police.
Yeah, investigate to what end?
The investigation body, based on your findings, will determine whether this is prosecutable or not. And that's why I brought in the Attorney General angle, that whether it would require an advice from the Attorney General. You may have to educate me on that aspect, because there are certain cases that don't go to the Attorney General. Yeah. In my view, and that's a fact.
Misdemeanors don't go for the principle. But when they are special, they can call for it.
Yeah, so the point I'm making is that in principle, I am not against the call for prosecution. Indeed, it's an option that is available. And I would rather wish those appropriate agencies trigger it than asking the president, putting the burden of responsibility on the president to call for it. That's the distinction I'm drawing. So in principle, I am not against that idea.
Okay.
But we should create and grow a culture of some of these institutions of states proceeding to do certain things without blinking an eye or looking over their shoulders. Now the other calls to that were made, like, somebody was resigned from parliament. I'm not sure the Danchma will do that. In any case, we are few months to the elections. Resigning comes with some implications and complications in terms of the law. The time that you hold a by-election and all the rest, and whether even a by-election will be necessary, looking at the time and scope. And the new register being developed, compiled. So that option, really, I don't see it happening. And so I won't waste too much energy interrogating that. Then there's the other aspect that gets him off as a candidate for the party relative to the coming elections. I've heard that too. Yeah, but you see, that's where the problem is. This is a democracy. Unfortunately, didn't bring the MPP constitution. I know that there's something about misconduct that can lead to sanctions. And whether this particular misconduct, because obviously it is a misconduct in my candid opinion, perhaps even more than that.
In fact, people who rain curses on people were suspended because they have misconducted themselves.
So this kind of misconduct, in terms of its weight, what sanction does it carry? Does it go to the extent of withdrawing him as a candidate? Would that be appropriate? Would that be democratic? In any case, it is a primary with a party contest that puts him there as a candidate.
Okay.
You might have to apply that mechanism to remove him.
Okay.
I haven't checked. Fortunately, Nana Kwame is here, so he might know as to whether this conduct will warrant a situation where the party and which organ of the party could take that decision that, look, we have withdrawn this gentleman as a candidate, meaning then they will have to hold new primaries or perhaps select somebody as the party constitution allows them to do. So that area too, issues of democratic competition and the rest, the principle also comes in. The will of the electorate within that party primary, the constituency, those who are entitled to vote.
If the party had the power to revoke his candidature, would you endorse that they do so?
I would, to be honest with you, I would prefer he's rejected at the polls, if either at the primary level or at the national level.
Well,
rather than the party.
The primaries are over.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying, that option really is not practicable within the time constraints.
All right.
That's my view.
Right. Now, Fifi Kote, what will be your take on this matter? And people are looking at it from the perspective of the effects of his conduct on the president as the man leading the charge.
Yeah, thank you very much, Samson. Now, I think this whole thing has put the whole fight against COVID in a rather very bad light. Because, I mean, let's say the government is leading this whole process. And in terms of the examples that ought to be given, the best people who should be able to say this example should be those who are in positions of responsibility. I want to say that the public outcry was massive. There was huge outrage. And I want to disagree a bit with my good friend Nana Kumea when he sought to create impression as though whatever Carlos did was simply some kind of epiphany that had come to him, a sudden illumination that has made him to take that decision. That's not the case at all. If you listen carefully to his initial reaction in that interview, you could see that somebody who is really believing that what he did was okay, as long as he kept the necessary physical distance. So you could see, as far as concerned, he was totally unconscious of the implications of what he had done. So I'm sure the initial backlash, I'm sure came to him as a surprise because he wasn't expecting the public to react that way. So whatever has happened really has happened because the public outcry and the outrage was massive. And of course, the government felt very embarrassed. And of course, pressure was brought to bear on him. And he has taken this decision. So please, let's not make it look as though he himself had really thought about it right from the beginning and thought that's the proper thing to do. Let's not do that. That would be trying to deceive the country. So he was forced to basically resign. And let's say that has been done. I want to say that given the whole difficulties we are having with COVID at the moment, and the fact that some people actually are doing time, okay, they've been punished, they are in jail today as a result of having infringed that law, I can understand why the public just feel this is not just enough. Because it's almost as if we are treating those who are highly placed in one way and allowing those who are not highly placed, I mean, to be treated differently. The business about what my brother Kuku Baku says that it is not a president's responsibility because there's law enforcement. That may be true, but you clearly know that, especially when it is we have had such publicity related to people who have been prosecuted, people who are today doing time in jail as a result of having infringed that law. I don't think the president should be waiting necessarily, I mean, for law enforcement people to go and do what they've got to do. He should be able to put his foot down and say, listen, we have to set example. And this is the highest level of example that can be set. I mean, I can give you maybe it's not exactly the same kind of analogy, but a similar analogy, where, for example, at the very beginning of the PNDC, a close relative of President Rawlings at the time was involved in an act, and in order to be able to show that example, that leadership at the highest level, I mean, then President Rawlings, I mean, Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, who was then the chairman of the PNDC, ordered that the right laws be put in place and the person has to pay the appropriate penalty to the highest level. So I'm saying in terms of example, the president simply can't say that, no, law enforcement has to do what they got to do. Because you know that when it comes to issues that have to do with government and officials of government or people close to the ruling party, law enforcement people, by their very nature, are kind of hesitant. And why should they not be? They rightly have a reason to be afraid. Because if you don't know, you go and touch the sacred cow, you may be in trouble. Because once it comes to the people who are connected to the president, it's not exactly the same. You do recall, for example, at the very beginning of 2017, when the NPP came into office, some very flagrant, high-profile things that were done even at the Jubilee House, including assaulting of what you call police officers. I mean, what could the police do? Nothing. Why? Because you dare not touch anybody close to the ruling party, otherwise you may be in trouble. So if we just want to leave it for law enforcement to do what they got to do, I mean, they may be hesitant, and for right reason. Okay. Because they're afraid of victimization. So I'm saying it's not enough for the president to just say, yes, he has resigned and that's the end of the journey. I'm saying they should be able to still not order, but ask that something be done more than that.
Right. Okay. Now, Professor Kukua, sorry, beating a dead horse, what's the point? Hello, Professor Asari. Hello, Professor Kukua Asari, are you there? Yes, I can see you.
Yeah, Samson.
Yeah, why beat a dead horse?
Well, no, I think everything that has been said is correct. I agree with both Nana Akomia and Fifi. But it seems to me what you are doing is really addressing symptoms. Because what happened was so obviously wrong, you have to ask, why was it done? And unless we understand the culture that emboldens people to do such things which are so obviously wrong, we'll be back to the same conversation next time with a different person. Is Carlos the only person who has engaged in this type of behavior? I don't know, but if I were to venture a guess, I would say he is the only one who has confessed to doing what he has done. So the culture here is one of win at all costs when it comes to politics. And that is undermining and destroying all of us, including all our institutions. People no longer make a distinction between good and bad, ethical and unethical, lawful and unlawful. When it comes to politics, it's all about what can I do to win? If it comes to primaries, what can I do to disqualify someone? If it comes to general elections, what can I do to disqualify someone? What can I do to get more votes that I'm entitled to? How can I register people who are underage? How can I register people who are not Ghanaians? How can I vouch for someone even though I have no basis of knowing that the person is a Ghanaian? So to me, there is a bigger problem than Carlos. And we have to do some reintrospection and look at what is wrong with the society. Because too many things are going on when it comes to politics. That to me is just galling. And so that's the only thing that I can add.
And why do
whatever we say about Carlos,
why do we
that's not the real problem.
Okay, I get
dig deeper.
I get that. But why do we put this to politics? Is there not law enforcement in place? Why is it that during the NPP primaries, there is evidence of so many people who violated the protocols? The EI's requirement is that whilst political rallies are banned, political activities are not banned. But political activities must have not more than 100 people. There was overwhelming evidence of that breach. More than 100 people, you must wear your face mask or you suffer the pain for not wearing a face mask. We have seen the evidence of many people not wearing their face mask or face shield or face covering as the EI requires. So why is it that it comes to the president must do something when the law enforcers are there? Recently, they did their own soup, and they said they arrested as many as 40 people who were flouting the face mask, regulation. Why must this be down to politics?
Because, Samson, you have to be realistic. You have to understand the system that you live in. You have to understand that our institutions are very weak, and therefore, everyone looks up to the president. People understand that law enforcement itself is politicized. So when it comes to criminal prosecutions, for instance, when I was growing up, we only knew about Jekedaku. Jekedaku was not the Attorney General. He was the Director of Public Prosecutions. But he was revered, he was respected. Everyone knew that he was independent of the Attorney General, and on his own, he could come after you if you engage in criminal behavior. Today, if you ask me who the Director of Public Prosecution is, I don't know. Why? Because I believe that we have so much tampered with and undermined our institutions that there's not a single person out there that you would ask, do you believe law enforcement is independent enough to carry out the prosecution of someone who is affiliated with government? The answer will be, are you kidding me? Resoundingly. So that's the problem. That is the elephant in the room that we must address.
Interesting.
That at some point in time, we have to say enough is enough. Let us develop independent institutions. And we are going to be talking about the Auditor General. Okay. So I don't want to say too much about that. Right. But that is another independent institution that we must leave alone to do its work.
Okay, so
if we destroy the.
Okay, so hold your fire on that. Hold your fire on that. Let me bring in Dr. Srebo Kweku, who is with the Electoral Commission. Doc, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, my brother. My regards to your panelists and the Ghanaians as a whole.
Thank you very much for making time, sir. Now, has the EC taken the time and trouble to identify the places that Carlos at the time was carrying coronavirus and visited, at least for purposes of the isolation, for contact tracing and isolation of your staff who were at these centers?
Thank you very much. The officers on the field have been asked to let us know where the area that they touched, and I know the COVID team is also doing those monitoring.
So at this time, you can't tell us for a fact that the people may be out of danger.
I'm not so clear about the question.
You can't tell us for a fact at this point that your staff who were at these centers that he visited whilst he was carrying COVID-19 have been attended to, if necessary.
My information is that I did not have direct contact with the officers there. Okay. He was rather interacting with the people who moved there. So I'm told that they didn't have direct contact with the reception teams.
All right.
So if in India, then it could be like a contact with an applicant, then applicant will get to contact with our people. But there was no direct contact between him and our officials.
But that is not to say you are ruling out the possibility of contact tracing and testing your officers within those places?
That's what I'm saying, that we have asked the district officers there to help us identify the areas that he touched. And the national COVID team is also doing those monitoring. Okay. This one is more of the specialists there, because Electoral Commission, who don't have the skill to do the contact tracing and the rest.
That's right.
So the COVID people are working on that. Okay.
Thank you very much. We'll return to you on the other substantive matters as far as your role is concerned. Nana, I thought I saw you going through your constitution to respond to assist us with what Kweku was asking. Otherwise, shall we move on to the exercise ongoing and the matters arising?
Well, thank you, Samson. My little point is that a call has been made for party to sanction Honorable Carlos Ahinkra. A call has also been made for him to be punished and prosecuted. These are early days. I would imagine that the steering committee of the NPP would consider other options as the party's constitution so prescribes. If the conduct of Carlos falls within the breaches provided by the NPP constitution, I have no doubt that the steering committee will take a decision. The call for prosecution, there are agencies and institutions responsible for that. The call has been made. I am sure in the coming days, they would also examine that call, and if there's any merit in it, I am sure they will act up to their responsibility. Okay. The business about Carlos being forced, that Fifi Kwete, I don't know where Fifi got that from. Carlos obviously didn't take into account the full ramifications of the action. But subsequently, he must have realized that his action was completely out of order, and he has taken the necessary step. To say that he didn't know what he was doing, and so he's been forced to resign without any evidence is quite unfair to the situation.
All right.
You know, I was surprised, indeed, intrigued by an example Fifi gave. He went as far as the PNDC era. What an inappropriate recollection, analogy. I was surprised. I'm sure he was referring to one Adi, who was Mr. Rawlings's nephew or so, and who shot somebody. The public tribunal found him not guilty, no, on some technicalities, and Mr. Rawlings came back and said, no, retry. No, please, it's very important. Retried the guy who was retried and dealt with. First of all, we're talking here of an unconstitutional environment. So even that recollection for me was inappropriate relative to this one. But I can give him the same, many more examples where Mr. Rawlings himself, within the same context of the PNDC, glossed over so many things. So it's completely inappropriate. And even come back to the constitutional era, things he presided over without doing anything. So I think he shouldn't have brought in that at all. But let me tell you something, and I see the drift. Look, there's no need for us to lose faith in this democratic system. If you've lived under a dictatorship before, you would not for a moment give up, fold your hands, or give up on this system. There are people who have stood up. Look, you remember the late Awini, COP Awini.
Yeah, I want to talk about.
And you remember the incident, it was also during a registration period. His confrontation with the regional minister, who I think was the MP or an ex-MP.
Yeah. Also Clotte.
Yes. We need to grow a critical mass of strong-willed people, backed by civil society. You don't give up. You don't say that, oh, it's the end of the road. You can't. Then we might as well go back to a dictatorship.
Okay. The examples of Awuni, I'm sure there are just a few of them within the system because of the acts of victimization and all sorts of things, unfair transfers. When the police talk to you, the way they get dealt with, because they have dealt with a political matter, they get moved, thrown away from Accra
so we give up.
Some
so
village.
Is the option zero option?
And then they probably lose their family, having to transfer them to all the way. Some of them may be on study in Accra, where they are doing maybe an evening program or a Saturday program, weekend program, and they get transferred all of a sudden and they lose that opportunity.
Something. If some of us were prepared, we're not ready to put our necks on the line, we will not have this democracy.
Right.
People died.
That's right. Okay. So
people died.
Okay.
People went to jail. People ran into exile.
Well, not too many
so
people.
So those who talk and
not too many people are ready to make those sacrifices.
Then they better shut down.
Okay. All right. So let's now get into the EC's ongoing exercise. Dr. Srebo, let's start with you. You issued a statement after the first day of the exercise to express satisfaction. The public was angry at you that it doesn't appear that you followed what was going on by the tone of the statement you issued.
Something, I'm not sure of the statement you are referring to, but in all our releases, we have been complaining about the refusal of the public to observe the social distancing. And we have come out with a lot of new steps and the rest to ensure people observe them. We have been saying that we are satisfied with the figures and the way the machines are working, but we have all been complaining about the refusal of Ghanaians to observe the social distancing protocol.
Are you disturbed about what is going on at these registration centers because of COVID?
Come again.
How concerned are you about what you see about the complete lack of observance of the social distancing, the protocols, no physical distancing? There are people you see around the place, they are not wearing face masks or any covering, and at some places almost like a stampede.
Let us also be very careful we don't jam all of them together. There are a huge number of centers who are observing those protocols. So there are some few of them who are not, and let's talk about that. If you make a statement that they are completely out, then I would say that maybe those who are making those observations have not monitored enough centers. So some of the breaches are there, but it's not universal. And we are always coming out with different steps to attend to them. And if you wouldn't mind, I can take you through the steps that we are taking now.
So you want to talk about new steps, not the initial steps that you said people have to go through. Get to the center, you must wear a mask or a covering according to the law, and then there are Veronica buckets. You said you supply them. There are sanitizers and so on. What new beyond that?
I don't know whether you have been observing the system yourself. If you are maybe speaking from what people are saying, that's a different thing. But if you have gone there yourself, we realize that what we decided to provide, they are all there. But the challenges are that some places, they are not observing the social distancing, and some places too, before they go into the cordon of areas, the market areas, they put off their mask. And it's a universal thing that is happening in the whole country. And all of us should be concerned, not necessarily at the polling station. We should encourage people to observe the protocols because the disease is there. And as long as we are not asking people to observe them, they may not go to the registration center to misbehave, quote. But whatever they are, it's a concern. So we should all ensure that we all contribute our quota to continue to educate Ghanaians for them to appreciate that the disease is real. So whatever they are, as the law is, before they get out of their houses, they should be in the mask. Before whether they are going out or coming, they should be in the mask. And when they get into contact with people, they should observe the social distancing. And that is what should be observed, and we are trying our best to reinforce them.
Koko, what do you say about what you have observed so far? perhaps, like you said, I may not have seen enough, so I am depending on what some people are saying.
Yes, and let me be honest with you too, I have not gone around checking on the spot myself. I haven't done that. But these days, because of technology and the vibrancy of the media, you are able to see live, playbacks of the scenes there. You go on social media to some of them. Of course, some are fake, some are not a true reflection of the situation.
The EC is good. The EC is good at telling us what is fake. So far, they haven't told us any of the footage generated as a result of the registration is fake.
Well, I'm not too sure about that.
They haven't said so yet.
No, I think I read something somewhere on one particular pictorial representation of an alleged registration center. I think I heard some, maybe it wasn't an official statement, it might have been an EC official who was responding.
Let's get Dr. Kwaku to clear that. Have you detected any, fake, footages out there or something like that? And have you responded to them?
I'm not so sure because we are working from different angles. But what I'm saying is that we appreciate the concern.
So no, sorry. It's not about not being so sure. The question is, have you detected any such? Because in previous times, when you detected something like that, you have issued a statement to indicate to us it is fake, and then you hand it over to law enforcement. Have you detected any such?
That I'm saying that I have not, but we have regional director, district officer, different people. So I can speak for myself, but I may not be sure that this happened somewhere. I have not seen any fake news. We appreciate that some people are not observing the protocol.
Dr. Kweku, with the greatest of respect, you are speaking for the Electoral Commission, not in your personal capacity. So, Kweku,
and I don't have all the information that I should give us, so I cannot come here and say that there is or there is not. One, I don't have that information.
Okay, thank you. So Kweku can proceed. Yes.
I haven't seen any official release, but I think I heard somebody purporting to speak for the EC on one of the radio networks relative to a particular pictorial representation that appeared on social media.
Okay.
Yes, but otherwise, it is so obvious based on the majority of what we've been seeing that in terms of the safety protocols, quite a lot of places are being breached. I mean, you can see it yourself.
He says a few places. He disagrees with the use of a lot of places.
Well, but you see, this relativity, I wouldn't waste too much time debating that. I was talking about the number of scenes I have seen on social media and some of the television networks. If I'd seen about 15, at least about 10, I saw breaches of the safety protocol. So that's the context in which I'm talking about a lot, what I've seen, and that is a concern. I mean, I don't think there's any Ghanaian out there who will not be concerned about those breaches, and the breaches are more relative to those who are coming to register. And I'm not sure, there's a friend of mine was telling me that perhaps what they should have done was to create a certain system where the people who come, they are given numbers, and then you go back, maybe even a board, the time when your number is up, it is announced, and then you come in, and I found that very imaginative and creative. But the situation where everybody comes, where it may not be at the scene of the registration, but they are out there, and they are confessing, everybody, some have no marks and all. It's a real difficulty, and we need to look at how to go about that.
Would you step in there to do this exercise?
To register? Yes, I'll be registering. Why not?
You will?
Of course.
Okay. Thank you. Nana, yes, let's hear from you.
Well, thank you, Samson. Yes, I have also seen some footages. In some of the footages, there appeared to be order. People were in protective gear, people were observing social distances. But I even saw one just recently by my good friend, Okujeto, the MP for Northton or something, where he had posted the scene at the registration, one of the registration centers in his constituency, and there was so much order, and he was very elated about it. I've also seen other footage where there was order. I've also seen a lot of footage where there was people getting together, totally disregarding social distancing. Now, this exercise is just at the very, very early stages, the first 2, 3, maybe the first week. And I'm sure as it goes on, the Electoral Commission will be looking at why some places are orderly and why some places are not orderly, and will take steps to replicate what is happening in the orderly places and replicate them as they go subsequently. It's a life issue.
Are we in a situation where you can take chances and hope to progress the way you are talking about?
Your question brings in a wider issue. If we are if we agree that we are in the period of political activity, then we need, as a country, to think through it, because this mass gathering, people getting together, is going to occur very, very frequently as we go into the campaign. And we must be prepared for it. If I've seen footage where, look at the NPP primaries, where as a result of the election, people were so happy they forgot protocols. We saw footages like that. It's normal. I've seen footage where the president went to Abosokai, passing through, and people got together and disregarded the protocols. I've seen footages of President Mahama in some political activity, and I have all the footage on my phone, and there's a lot of people getting together completely disregarding protocols. And these are just the early stages. And as we go on, if President Mahama were to come onto the streets here, people would get together to cheer him. If President Akufo-Addo were to do the same, people would get together to cheer him. It's going to happen. So we need to think through as we are getting into the campaign season.
Is there a danger? Is there a danger in that? Do you recognize that?
No, there is a danger. That's what I'm saying. That there's a danger.
So if there's a danger, and you are a leader who is asking everybody to do what is right, and you say, what we do not know is how to bring back life.
Yeah.
You say, once you step out of your front door, you are at risk of catching coronavirus. You issue all the measures and say we should do all of these. And then you know very well that once you step out, you put people in danger, and yet you step out.
But that's what I'm saying.
Is that good leadership?
If you pursue your argument, then the president should not step out. Then President Mahama should not step out. Then MPs campaigning should not step out. Because even me, the last time I went to pay condolences to a bereaved family in my constituency, when I got to the house, in 10 minutes, there was a crowd of 400 gathered into the house because they heard that the former MP had come around and everybody wanted to come and see me. They hadn't seen me in a long time and to say hello, and for whatever reason. 400 people in the compound. I didn't know about it. They heard it and they came together. Now, am I then going to say that because of that, I wouldn't go and offer condolences to a bereaved friend or something like that? So I should be mindful of it happening, because we cannot say that in this campaign period, President Mahama should not go out there and campaign. Once he does that, people will gather to listen to him, and you would have this situation on our hands. Once President Akufo-Addo goes out there to campaign, people will gather. Unless we decide that
what do you understand by the law, by the EI issued by the president itself, which you violate at the pain of sanction, of potentially paying 12,000 or between 12,000 and 60,000, or go to jail for 4 to 10 years. He says, and that's the law, political rallies are banned. Political activities are allowed, subject to observation of all these protocols, and not more than 100 people. You are saying once they can expect that, 400 people will mass up, it doesn't matter, they should go.
No, I agree with you, but I'm saying that you should also be mindful of the reality. When I went to express condolence, it wasn't my fault that people in the surrounding houses came to the house because of my presence. It had nothing to do with me. And there was no way, unless the people, I'm sure when the crowd started coming, the people locked the gates. But then the compound was already full. That's what I'm saying. Going forward, we need to avert our minds to this phenomenon, because unless we decide that no political campaign should take place in the open, and that political campaign should be done where there's no contact between the politician who is campaigning and the public who wants to hear his message.
Okay.
It's going to happen. And I've told you that I've seen footage of President Mahama making donations in the Volta region. It was a huge crowd,
all right,
massed together.
I'm hearing
and it's going to happen. So
I'm
going forward, how do we structure campaign?
I'm hearing you say that the law is not up to reality, and that the law will not be obeyed. Fifi, what have you observed, and how concerned are you about the registration exercise itself?
Yeah, Samson, thank you once more. Let me just say that we are in very unusual times, and we should not in any way seek to rationalize it, because when we do so, what we'll be doing effectively is rationalizing the deaths of our own people and the illness of our people, and we should not do so. Something I don't know about you, but I'm sure my brother Kwekubaku and I are very strong lovers of football, and we watch very passionately, especially the EPL, the English Premier League. Even in a developed nation with such high levels of literacy, high levels of awareness, they have taken the decision to have what you call football matches and sports events in empty stadia. And they are far more, educated than we are. The levels of education, they are much higher. But even they have realized that you simply cannot take chances. Now, the same thing is happening all over the world. America has elections in November. But you can even see that the major political events are being done without crowds. And it's only recently that you have President Trump, who effectively decided to do exactly what is not advisable. And that has received huge condemnation everywhere. Packing crowds into an auditorium, and people actually condemn it very highly, because that is simply, and that is exactly, you can see what's going on in America today. While the whole world, most countries are going down, America's situation is actually becoming worse. Now, so what is going on in our country today is absolutely, difficult to understand. Now, something I want to say that in connection to the previous discussion, when you, for example, mention why is that institutions are not getting the strength to do what is right, individuals are not having the boldness to stand and do what is right, it's also largely because we have in our situation so many people who have the voices to speak, who have got what you call the capacity to be able to speak, and they keep quiet while wrong things are being done. Now, I want to mention, for example, that the GMA, that's a Ghana Medical Association, the recent statement they issued, and they directed it both at the NIA, that's the National Identification Authority, and then the Electoral Commission, asking that those two institutions and their heads must be held responsible for anything that happened in the areas of their operation. Because in truth, the last thing you want to do in this time is to actually be having mass events. Now, so that even tells you the appropriateness of even having this mass registration that we are having at the moment. I can even say that even having a revision is bad enough, but that's actually far better because they will be dealing with how many people, maybe 2 million people or maybe 3 million people. But now you are having a situation where upward of 18 million people are supposed to move to registration centers and have themselves registered. And we all know that, in fact, the president himself has quoted it several times, the virus does not move. It is humans that move it. Now, so to the extent that you have 18 million people who are moving, and this is being done on a day-to-day basis for a period of upward of 1 month, I mean, this is potential disaster. And the question is, who should be held responsible? I want to say the President of the Republic, his government, have to be very responsible for what it is we are having. Because you can't in one breath take decisions that closes churches, closes schools, ask people not to have large meetings. Even today, you say political party rallies should not be done. Then at the same time, you actually allow a situation where we are having mass registration simultaneously of the Electoral Commission and also of the NIA. Now, people are now saying that individuals must take responsibility, which is true. Individual responsibility is always going to be the case. But I'm saying, even if you have developed democracies like America, with the high levels of education, even they know that you simply can't leave it to individual responsibility. That's why they are not allowing for mass grouping. They are not allowing for events. They're not allowing for
guess what, Fifi, guess what? In America,
yes?
If you decide to attend Donald Trump's rallies, you go there at your own risk. And the campaign team of Donald Trump have put a disclaimer. You must first go online and register to attend. And then there is a disclaimer that says that for you agreeing to attend the rally, you are agreeing knowing that you are at the risk of contacting coronavirus. And when you do, you cannot take an action against Donald Trump or his team. So that is individual responsibility. You go or you don't.
Yeah, but something, you see, the difference is this. Attending a rally is something that you can choose to do or not to do. But when it comes to registration for voting, you have no option. It's your civic responsibility. It is your duty as a citizen. So you are left with no choice. Even people who have got what we call underlying conditions, they have no choice but to go and register. I mean, aged people who absolutely are very prone to fall into this and possibly having difficulties, they have no option but to go. Now, who is imposing this? Who is imposing this on the people of Ghana? Obviously, you and I, we know. You and I, we know. Now, so it's important for many more voices to speak up. Lots more voices in this country must speak up and condemn what is going on, because we are endangering this country. Now, I want to say that even if you look at what happened at the MPP rally, MPP primaries, which itself was a high level of irresponsibility for the ruling party to organize primaries and then allow for the kind of things that we saw. Now, even that one, with the problem it is bringing today, now you can even imagine what now is happening there. And that one was happening in 160 constituencies. This one is happening in 275 constituencies at the same time. And it's not just that. Okay. It's not like an event that is happening just in one place. No.
All right.
In virtually every community. All right. If you know exactly how polling stations are.
So when you say people must speak up, they should speak up and say what?
And condemn. The fact that the country is being made at this moment to be going through what we are going through. For example, why? For the sake of public health, we should be able to prevail on the leadership of this country to be able to come to the realization that this thing that we are doing is going to be total chaos and destruction to our country.
Okay, hold on there. Professor Kekwa, sorry. The president, for example, issued an EI and says, it didn't say churches are opened. Some people don't read the EIs. It says you may. So the churches who have an understanding of what the law said, the use of the permissive language, decided that you say I may, my decision is that I don't want to. The president again said schools may open. May open. If you intend to open, you must open the school subject to the protocols you are supposed to undergo. Fumigation, disinfection, among others. Then they went ahead to say students may return to school. So a student is not under compulsion to go to school. And the Ghana Education Service clearly understands that, and they say, well, we encourage you to go, but if you decide not to go, and you can study at home and then come and take the exam or whatever your choice, that is your decision. Why should the exemption given for the registration exercise be blamed on the state or the EC or the president if somebody went there and as a result of that, you know, coronavirus got worse?
Well, you know, Samson, I don't want to relitigate this because I think it's been litigated enough. And the last chance to do something about it was at the Supreme Court, and nothing really happened. The Supreme Court gave the Electoral Commission the go-ahead to undertake the exercise. I believe Fifi has made a good distinction between discretionary activities and an activity like registering to vote, which really you cannot just decide, well, I don't want to do it, because if you don't do it, it carries with it so many consequences, including sometimes even your ability to run for a future, for office in the future. Having said all that, the point is the Electoral Commission has assured us that it is able to do this safely. And so we should hold them to that. We should demand that they do it safely. And frankly, the way I see it, if there is any evidence that something has gone wrong, they should be held responsible, because unlike the Trump example that you were giving, you know, that Fifi has explained it. That is discretionary. This is not. Rather than litigate it, let us figure out ways to monitor continuously what is going on and make adjustments as needed. Where I might have an issue, and I am happy my friend Mr. Strebo is there, maybe he can help me, because some of us, through no fault of us, are locked out of the country. We cannot come in, therefore we cannot register. Many of us, including me, we were previously registered. There was really, as far as I can tell, nothing wrong with my registration card. They have rendered it obsolete. Now I can't come and register. What specific plans do they have for people like me? That's the question I would want him to address.
Right. Whilst he gets ready to address that question, what would you say to anybody who says you cannot be right by saying that the EC should be held to improve the situation when they have clearly told you before you come to the place that you have to do these things to reduce your risk?
Well, you know, of course, individual responsibility is important, but they are in charge. They have invited people to come and register. And so they have ultimate responsibility to secure the safety of these people who honor their invitation to come and register. To just say that, well, we have said X, Y, and Z, and if you don't do it, we don't care. That's not good enough. It would almost be saying that when it comes to voting, we'll tell you that vote once, But if you decide to vote 5 times, well, that's your problem. No. The EC has a responsibility, an affirmative responsibility to provide a safe place for people to show up.
Okay.
They went to the Supreme Court and gave the assurance that they are able to do it. And so I don't think we should relitigate that. We should hold them to their own words, that they are able to provide safe grounds for people to come and register. If they can't do that, then there's a big problem. Something, I'm afraid that unless we are very careful, we would end up with a voters register that has so many questions surrounding it that it is not possible that it can be used to organize a fair election. I'm very concerned about that, because registering so many people during a pandemic is not a trivial exercise. You can Google Zambia. They were supposed to do registration this month. They postponed it. The Electoral Commission there said, no, we can't do it. So we are going to postpone it to October. And in October, what we will do, people who have previously registered, they just have to do verification, and we will register new people. That to me makes sense. But, you know, different election managers do things differently, and I respect that. They think they can register 17 million people during this pandemic era. Well, let them do it. But let them do it safely. And if they can't do it safely, let us hold them responsible.
Now, from the caution from the health authorities or the experts, it becomes obvious that what is going on is a fertile breeding ground for an exponential rise in the infections, regardless of the assurances that are given. Would you suggest to the EC that the Supreme Court has not compelled them to go and do a registration? Would you suggest to them that they should consider halting this process?
I have no suggestion for them. I think people have made enough suggestions to them, and they have decided they have something in mind that they want to do. Now they should do it safely. If they are not able to do it safely, then we should hold them responsible. I mean, it is too late now to be giving them advice and offering them suggestions and so on and so forth, because we debated this for about 5 or 6 months. Everything that can be said has been said, and the EC has prevailed. Even the Supreme Court has given them the go-ahead. So let them go ahead, but they must do it responsibly or face the consequences. What's
the point? What's the point in holding somebody responsible for the dead when there was an opportunity to avoid the death occurring?
Well, you know, of course, we can't go back to the Supreme Court and provide a hypothetical that you just provided, that people are going to die, so don't let them register. The Supreme Court was aware of that.
The Supreme Court didn't compel them.
Of that.
Professor, sorry, the Supreme Court didn't compel the EC to go and do a registration. If the EC wants to stop it today, it can stop it, and it would not have violated any law.
I don't know. I think something you are really in the realm of hypotheticals, because we have been having this debate for about 5 months and 6 months, and it is very clear that the EC has decided that it is going to do a new register. Not only has it decided, it has actually started doing it.
Okay.
And so while it is doing it, you are asking me to advise them to stop. Well, I wish, I mean, my words were very powerful, but I don't think they are.
Okay.
And therefore, it is better to talk about the more realistic things. The more realistic things are, how do you create an environment where this exercise can happen safely? For instance, every polling station, or depending on the size of the polling station, the EC can earmark the number of people who show up for registration on any given day. maybe it's a small one, so 50 people. Maybe it's a medium-sized one, so 100 people. Maybe it's a large one, so 200 people. Then it may issue sheets or pieces of paper, 1 to 50, and then everybody else goes home. And then the 50 people, they have lines drawn so that people know where to stand. It is a difficult exercise, but it can be done. And I think there has to be some planning going on, because the pictures that I am seeing are really frightening. Okay,
thank you. Let me go to Srebo Kwaku here. But the question I'm asking almost everybody, Dr. Prosasari, would you queue up and register if you were in the country from what you are seeing?
Personally?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I won't.
Thank you.
Because I consider the risk to be too high.
Okay. Dr. Srebo Kwaku, can we take it from this point, the suggestion that Professor Kukwasari just makes, to sanitize the process so that people don't risk their lives, you know, more than they are doing now, if you like. He says you can issue cheats, you can determine specific numbers of people you register for a particular, you know, registration center for a particular day. So we don't have to have people go to a place, a registration center, and sit the whole day.
Thank you very much. I want to put on record that I registered yesterday. Then to a lot of things that he said we are already doing. The machine is able to generate queue control numbers. So we've told our officers that at least having worked for about 3 or 4 days, they know their capabilities. So they should generate the key in the machine. When you go to queue control numbers, it will give you the days that you will select.
Okay.
So assuming the capacity of the team is the capacity of the team is to register 150, then they should generate the 150 and give them out to the people in the queue. Then those who have not, who don't fall within the capabilities, they will generate the following day's date and give it to them. So when they come the next day, they'll be considered. Again, we have increased the number of mobile teams, so that whenever there's huge numbers at the center, the officers will call out this officer concerned, and the officers will ask the mobile team to move in to help clear the people in the queue. But as I've been saying and will continue to say,
okay. Dr. Kwaku's line is getting bad. Okay, so let's get to fix Dr. Kwaku's line.
Ghanaians who are 18 years and above.
Okay.
Are you okay now?
Yeah, you can start. You say you are dealing with Ghanaians who are 18 years and above?
Yes, and they're of sound mind. So everybody should be concerned about his or her health before you think of others. You yourself should know that if you don't take the protocols very seriously, you may endanger your own life. So once we are able to push that into the understanding of people will then help the cause. Because whatever the commission decided to do, we are implementing them. But it's left to the applicants to also reciprocate. And we are going further. We have even asked the security persons. Then when people come there and they are not observing the protocols, they should implement the law. If they need to be arrested, they should. If they need to start from the place, they should. We have asked our officers that whoever comes there and is breaching the regulation, they should ask them to go and come back. We're prepared to observe the protocols. So we are increasing the number of centers, we are increasing the number of mobile teams, and we are also asking anybody who matter to also speak, so that people will appreciate that we are not in normal times and we should abide by the protocols. Once we continue to observe this, it will be done. I want to say that Mali has done election during the protocol. Malawi has done it. Has done it. Others are doing what can also our health seriously.
We are certainly also paying attention, like you had been saying earlier before we got to this stage, paying attention to the science. And the science shows that in the last few weeks, our situation is not good. Now we have 117 deaths, and we have recorded so much. We are now hitting the 20,000 mark, even though we have about over 14,000 recoveries. Community infections is where we are now. We are not actually in importation of the infections. So we should be minded by the science. Professor Kukwasari's question to you also is, what happens to people like him? And I have seen a letter written to you, or a petition written to you by Ghanaians in the UK and elsewhere, led by Richard Sky, informing you that there are many of them, they are out there, they have been locked out. What are you doing to them? They desire to register and to vote.
If I heard that Dr. Clearly said that he will not register. So those who want to register, while the ban on the travel outside and inside is lifted, they will take the next step. The law clearly says that if you are registered not less than 60 days to an election, you can be added to the list for that election. So if the ban is lifted and we have more than 60 days, then clearly we can register them and put them on the list for them to vote during the 2020 election. We should bear in mind that I don't know whether we will decide that we are going to conduct election on the 7th December. But if we are going to conduct the elections, then all activities that are supposed to be done should be done. Bear in mind that we should all take the necessary protocols so that we don't infest ourselves.
Do I hear you say you are planning for the possibility of registering people if the borders happen to be opened not more than less than 60 days to elections?
Exactly, it is in part of our timetable to raise Ghanaians outside, as we did in 2012, but for the COVID. And I'm saying that now there's a ban on the travel outside and inside. The borders are closed. So we cannot implement that part of the program. But if it is lifted before then, and if we have more than 60 days to election to do, we will do that. But if we register them less than 60 days, the law is clear, CI 91, clear that we cannot add them to the list.
Okay. So, Dr. Kweku, I desire to register and to vote. I take a number of things into consideration. In my area, I think you are doing in clusters. You are doing 6 days for each area and then you move on, right? So in my area, you are there right now.
Right. You're right.
You are there right now. I have gone out and seen the queues. I am afraid I'm unable to attempt it because I'm not thinking about myself alone. I'm thinking about my family, and I'm thinking that I may have people who have, as they call it, underlying situations. So I must be careful not to, put them in harm's way. I am a citizen. I want to register and vote. Here I am at a time you have asked me to register and vote, But I'm afraid because of what I see.
Yeah, so what we will do is that after you have spent the 6 days at your place, we'll move on to the next phase. We will continue to finish all the 5 phases. Then we'll have time for mop-up. So we'll come back to a place where people are still there not registered for the mop-up. Okay. When we finish with that, we will open our offices at the district offices for further registration up to the time that you cannot add to the register, and we will close. So you have time to go now. If you are not able to finish, we are finishing the first phase tomorrow. Then the next batch will start from Monday. If you're not able to fall within, then you wait for the mop-up. If you're not able to do the mop-up, you wait when we go to the district offices. If you are not, then as I said, if we register you be less than 60 days, you'll be registered, but you cannot be added to the list of people who vote on the 7th of December, because that will be against the law.
Okay, that's assuring. Any comments to the assuring message that he just gave? Very brief comments. Any one of you gentlemen?
Okay, something. Thank you.
Nana Kumia starts.
His comments are reassuring. Like I said, the exercise is in its early stages, and as the complaints come, as we go on, the EC will take measures to minimize the dangers. And I'm happy that they seem to be alive to that responsibility. The business about the president, if we try to partisan this little discussion, I'm terribly disappointed. This business about the president of Ghana to be blamed for imposing this registration, where's it coming from? In the NDC time, when they supervised registrations by the Electoral Commission, they said the Electoral Commission was independent and took independent decisions. In the end, another government's time, when the same Electoral Commission is taking decisions, then it is the president who is imposing. I mean, Fifi, we need to rise above this. As we speak, we are entering the season of political activity. I have videos here, if you are so minded. I have about 4 videos here of President Mahama campaigning. And you should see the complete disregard for the safety.
You seem to be focusing on President Mahama.
No. I have also mentioned President Akufo-Addo.
Okay.
If you remember.
But Fifi's point is, it's not that the president is imposing, but we are in covered times. Who moves out, who gets an exemption to do what, is determined by the president. It's the president who has determined that the EC has an exemption and that the National Identification Authority, they have exemption to do this mass process, whilst all other institutions are banned from doing any such.
The president also decided that political activity can go on. Should he then arrest President Mahama for engaging in political activity that brought people together to disregard the protocols? And when you see the videos, you understand. I'll give the videos to you. Maybe later you can play them. So it is all over.
You refer to the president going to Abotoka.
Yes.
Should he also then be arrested?
But that's what I'm saying, that you are going to have a situation where we need to think through and anticipate that this is going to intensify as the political activity gets heated up. And so we need to design rules of engagement. If we are even going to take the decision that political activity should not take place in the open, but take place in studios or whatever, we have to recognize this. We shouldn't partisan it as if it is one person who is doing it. It cuts across. And think through it and find ways that we can minimize the dangers. Because as we go towards December, it is going to increase. And it will not be coming from one party. Okay. And if you partisan the debates, it will be NPP, NDC, and will not get any.
So that's supposed to be very brief comments to the last portion of what Dr. Kweku had to say. And let me read something that may be also in that direction. This is an observation from Prince. He's the former MCE for Techiman. He says that he's monitoring in his area, and here are some observations. Where chairs and canopies are provided, the observance of the COVID safety protocols is up to scratch. So the EC will take note. Where chairs and canopies are provided, the observance of the protocols is up to scratch. Where there are chairs without canopies, people get crowded under whatever shade is available. So his suggestion is, number 1, individual responsibility. EC must ensure we have at least 100 chairs and a couple of canopies at every center. He has learned that the EC has budgeted for that. So that's, they are rather seeking to let the assemblies and the parties take that responsibility. He wants your education on the number of days for the exercise to be improved. People are rushing on the first day, but later they realize that going there for a while, after going there for a while, they realize that it might get to their time. So the education is important. Yes, Kweku, briefly.
Yes, a quick one. Yes, sir. just play back a bit. This is a press release dated 30th June 2020 from the EC, signed by Silviano, Acting Director of Public Affairs. And I think that's what I was referring to. I heard her talking. She says, I'll just take a relevant paragraph. Our attention has also been drawn to a photograph making rounds on social media, purporting to be a scene at a registration center. The photograph does not show the usual registration center setup that characterizes all EC registration centers. It just shows a large crowd gathered together in an area. Again, the originator of the photograph does not indicate the registration center where the photograph was taken. This is not a registration center of the EC, and we call on the public to disregard it. That's what I think I was referring to.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the director is unaware.
Is it possible we can make?
Yes, Fifi, yes.
Yeah, Samson, thank you very much. I heard Dr. Sribo mention that elections have gone on in Mali. He mentioned a few countries. And therefore, I mean, it's really nothing unusual in our country. Let me just explain quickly that yes, an election is a day event. So let's even assume that that itself is even not very good. At least it's limited to a day. What we are having now is actually having an election on a day-to-day basis for a period of at least 1 month. And this spreads across the whole country. So the two are not the same. Totally different situation. Now, I also want to say that this situation where he's trying to shift the responsibility to people rather than to the Electoral Commission is totally unacceptable. It's like, for example, you open your stadium and ask crowds to come into the stadium, then later on you tell the people that as you come into the stadium, you are blamable if you do not observe physical distance. What business do we have opening the stadium in the first place? Why should we open the stadium in the first place? That's why all over the world, everyone is aware of this danger, and therefore they are closing places where you can have huge gatherings. Now, so if you literally, by your own decision, because this is actually the decision of the EC, if you recall, the Electoral Commission, I mean, in fact, during the referendum, the one that was supposed to lead to partisanship at the various assemblies, district assemblies, the Electoral Commission went in line with the president when the president realized that that decision to go partisan was not going to go. Now, it shows that there is a possibility where the Electoral Commission can actually realize that no, this mass thing is going to be a problem. At worst, let's make it one that becomes almost like a revision that reduces the number of the people who are going to. It's going to be limited to only people who have turned 18. Then it becomes much easier to be able to monitor and keep proper physical distance because the numbers will be much lower.
All right.
But you have chosen through your own intransigence to force the situation where 18 million people would have to move, and wherever they move, the virus moves, and then later on you come and say the individuals are to be held responsible. No, you are to be held responsible. You have to be held responsible. Don't push the blame onto the individual. You must carry the blame. And that's why I back the GMA's call that whatever happens in those centers, anybody who perishes, anybody who gets that disease, you, the leaders of the Electoral Commission, have to be held responsible. So stop passing the buck.
Okay. Professor Kokwa, sorry, what will be your reaction to what seems to be assuring from Dr. Kweku? He says even though it is clustered, the bus comes to your place and the train leaves at a point, but there will be a mop-up. If you are scared like me, I doubt I'll be able to go through this process. I get disenfranchised. I don't know if I did it myself or the EC did that to me. When they are done, there'll be a mop-up where you can go do it, or at their district level, you can go and then register alone. If there is enough time before the elections, not more than less than 60 days.
Something I really would say that they have a challenging task, and I wish them well. They should continuously monitor what is going on and try to adjust as they get information. It's not going to be easy, but you know, with hard work and planning, maybe they can actually do it. Beyond that, I think everything that we are saying has been said 1,000 times. So I really don't have something useful to add to this conversation that we've had over 6 months.
Okay. So one of the aspects we have been speaking to about COVID-19, Kwame Sapong-Asiedu says, Nana Komia is being realistic regarding our mass aggregation when it comes to general elections. However, in these times, realism is an acceptance of increased morbidity and possibly mortality. Anyone in our politics must remember the sick and the dead often don't vote. All political actors better take heed. There is a message from Dr. Oheniba Owusu-Danso, and he wants us to also look at issues from a certain perspective. And he says that it is important to stress that among all the processes of the EC leading to the next general election, the steps in the voter registration exercise provide probably the least risk. This is because whereas most of the processes will cover a couple of days and probably weeks to offer opportunity to allow for far less crowding and good social distancing as against the general elections, which will be held on a single day, we need to encourage all the relevant agencies and community leaders to enforce and ensure the nation the good observance of the COVID-19 protocols by the citizenry. If this is not feasible now, then it is the case. Is it the case that no general election shall be held in December 2020, since that will be a single day and comparatively result in difficulties for social distancing? Let's all get on board to contribute to ensure the COVID-19 protocols are observed everywhere in the country. And Dr. Oheniba Owusu-Danso is the CEO of the Komfanoche Hospital. I'll read just one or two more messages for you, and then we can move on. And this one, anytime the politicians step out, they know the law is going to be broken on their account. What does that make them? Leaders or lawbreakers? Colluding and abetting law breaking? We must be serious. Absurdity and injustice is a fatal mix for problems. You identify yourself as Ama. Okay, thank you for your messages. We'll take a, okay, Koku has something to say in a minute, and then we take a break.
All those cases that went to court, especially the Supreme Court one, was the issue of whether or not EC could hold the registration relative to COVID. Was it raised?
Was the issue?
Was COVID an issue?
I don't think it was.
So why? Why didn't they do that?
Why didn't who do that?
Those litigants, those who went to court, the plaintiffs, who are still talking.
No, the argument they went to court could not be on COVID.
Yes, but it is a subject matter now. The EC is going ahead doing registration relative to the Supreme Court's verdict. You said the Supreme Court didn't compel them, but I think there was an element of compulsion somewhere. If you have to do the registration without the old register, voter's card, relative to CI 126, that itself compels you to do something with it. Okay,
I suppose that's what Professor Kwekwasari was seeking to stress.
Yes, so my point is that the issue of COVID and its implications for the register, the new registration, never arose in the Supreme Court.
Yes, so you are not saying it cannot be raised now because people are seeing that
but
in
I
the
was
crowd.
Thinking,
because
but I was thinking
I'm sitting here personally. I am telling you that I have seen the queues. I want to register because I know my voter's ID card had become useless. But Simpson, I can't go there.
Simpson, if you protect yourself the way you are protected.
There's a queue.
No, but I'm telling you, the queue is outside. It depends on the time you go. There's a time, and it's many days.
It's a big queue.
No, so
I know that once I show face in my area,
so you will not register.
Be giving the privilege.
No, I'm asking you.
I may be giving the privilege to be asked to step forward.
Would you register? Would you register?
I doubt I might do it.
Wow, you will not.
I doubt I might do it.
Well, that's interesting. I would, but my point is that those who are challenging this process with COVID as their basis and had the opportunity to go to court but never canvassed that view should not waste our time.
Okay. All right. So we take a quick break. We'll return to wrap up around this, or we are done with this subject matter. Dr. Srebo Kweku, if you have any final comments to give us, and I think it may be important for you to stress the timelines that you have and the steps of the opportunities at each time that people have as your final word before you take leave of us.
Okay, Samson, thank you very much. But I briefly to comment on Honorable Fifi Kote's comments. The issue is that we have discussed the issue of compiling and not compiling the rest. And we are convinced beyond every reasonable doubt that we couldn't have used the current register. That's why we are compiling new ones. And the issues have been discussed, and those I don't need to go into that again. We have gone beyond that state. But for now, we are compiling the new register. We want everybody, Electoral Commission, Honorable Fifi Kote himself, the media and the rest. Let us all appeal to Ghanaians that once we are making the facilities available, they should make use of them, wear the mask, observe the social protocols, whether they are the polling station, receiving center or not, so that all of us will take our issues as a serious. The COVID, it can kill. So wherever you are, protect yourself and abide by the protocols. Now with that, our plans are to finish with the registration, the mass one, by the first week of August. Then we will use the rest of August and first week of September to produce the provisional register, make copies available to the political parties, and exhibit the register second week of September. Once we do the exhibition, there to the protocol should be observed. We finish exhibition September, then we are expecting that by the end of September, the registers will have been certified because by law, when we finish the exhibition, there will be objections against names in the register which should be deleted. There will be application for inclusion. People who have duly registered, maybe because of one or two things, their names were not captured in the register. Then there will be people who apply for corrections to their data. Because one of the canons for credible is accuracy. So once your name is wrong, spelled, your date of birth is wrong, whatever it is, we need to correct all those things. We'll correct them, then the district magistrate, who will be the revising officer, will certify the register. Once the register is certified, there is no more provisional register, it could be used. Our plan is to do nomination for both parliamentary, presidential, second week, between first and second week of October. Because by law, we should do nomination not less than 30 days to an election and not more than 90 days. So we want to go 60 days to the election to do the nomination. And the reason is that once you have up to 1 month to do it, you have enough time to produce the notice of poll and also produce the ballot papers. So once we're able to do the nomination first, second week of October, then we'll have time to print the ballot papers and the notice of poll and make them available. By our program, we intend giving the final register to the political parties by the 6th of November. In addition to that, we need to compile the list of special voting for those who qualify, because those who, by their nature of work, they will do on the election day, cannot go to the polling station to cast their vote. That will be done probably first day of September, so around that, for them to do that. But before you can do that, you should apply not less than 42 days to the election. So those people will be given opportunity to apply for special voting. Also, people will apply for a transfer of vote. because of, especially those who are the students, they have been called to the schools. They are final year students. A lot of them are 8 years and above. They will give opportunity to register. But by the time the election will come, they will have finished school and gone. So we're also going to give them opportunity to also register and transfer. And that means that the CR94 will be amended. We have already made a proposal is now before Parliament. It will amend it to accommodate them. People who also want to apply for PROSI, they also have not less than 42 days to apply. All these things will be done before we have the final result for the various polling stations to be used. And all these things will be done.
All right.
As we want to do the election on the 7th, educating the to observe the protocols.
Okay. Very finally, in a minute, in this day and age, the EC has no online option for this process. So I could simply go through the process online.
There are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that EC can do by the politicians. Anything that you do, they want to be there and see. They don't trust the system. Even after we have finished the election, the same place, the ballot papers are offloaded. We come to the hearing of everybody and the clear views of the people. At the end of the day, the election has been rigged. That is why in Ghana, I personally will never recommend voting. Because somebody will tell political parties begin to trust the system. A lot of the online things will not be an option because they don't try the system.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Srebo Kwaku. A very good friend of mine, Anshre, he's an MP. He's saying, Samson, what am I hearing? You are not going to register to vote. I need a certain assurance. Once I have it, I will do that. But I think I must be alive to vote. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back to go to the HR manager who has ordered one of his staff to go on leave for 123 days. The staff complained. Then he has extended it to 167 days. What's going on? We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guest, Abdul Malik Kubako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, and our regular panelist who was on leave for a long time, Nana Akomea. You loved him. He's been away for a while, and now he's joining us as the exigencies require. Fifi Fiavi Kwete is also on Zoom, and Professor Kweku Asare also on Zoom. So let's begin on this matter that is gained a lot of discussion about the President's directive to the Auditor General, Daniel Domelovo, to take his accumulated leave. So, on this note, let me start with Professor Kweku Asare. You have been eager to even start that discussion before we get here. What's wrong with what the President did? What's not wrong with it?
Samson, thank you. It's a fascinating topic, and every time you look around, there's something breaking. I wish we would have more time to discuss it. And I'm going to try and break it down so that people can actually appreciate all the issues. There are two directives here. Directive number one is that the Auditor General should take his accumulated 123 days leave with effect from July 1, 2020. That is pursuant to the 29th June letter, which has now been increased to 167 days pursuant to the July 3rd letter. And then the second directive is for him to hand over all matters relating to the office of the Auditor General to a Deputy Auditor General. And now the source of power for this action are identified as Section 21 of the Labor Act, Section 31 of the Labor Act, and by the most recent letter by Article 297. There's also a precedent by President Mills that is cited for that. So in terms of analysis, one can do four things. One can analyze it from a constitutional plane, or one can go and do statutory analysis, or one can analyze the precedent, or one can discuss the prudential issues arising out of the directives. So four broad areas. I'll start with the Constitution. It is a little interesting to start there because sometimes, depending on the answer that the Constitution will provide, all the subsequent analysis become moot. But it's still a good place to start from. Now, in terms of the Constitution, Samson, it's very important for people to pay attention to Article 187, 188, and 189. Unless you understand those three articles, none of this discussion will make a whole lot of sense. Article 187 creates an office, and that office is occupied by the Auditor General. And the Auditor General is given some specific functions to audit the public accounts, to disallow, to surcharge, and in the discharge of his functions, he is not subject to any directions or control. That's extremely important. So what we have is a constitutional officer. So he's a constitutional officer. Second, all his reports go to the legislature. So in that regard, he's a legislative officer. Okay, so you have to understand that. Then the instrumentality by which the Auditor General is to perform his function is provided in Article 188. Article 188 creates the audit service. So the office of the Auditor General is very different from the audit service. That's very important. The audit service is just the instrumentality through which the Auditor General performs his functions. But the Auditor General has his own office. And then Article 189 creates an audit service board. Something. This audit service board is the board of the audit service. It's not the board of the Auditor General's office. So this audit service board cannot direct or control the Auditor General because by definition, the Auditor General's office and the Auditor General is independent, individually and institutionally. If you don't get that, you're going to miss the whole boat. Now, what then comes next is to understand the values underpinning this architecture. First, we want an Auditor General who is generally beyond the reach of partisan politics. Because the Auditor General, after all, audits the executive. And any type of control that the executive can exercise over the Auditor General will render his work meaningless. So there's the constitutional guarantee of independence, there's functional and operational independence, there's freedom of reporting, there's financial autonomy, and there's managerial and administrative autonomy. The other important thing to note, Samson, is that because we have a constitutional office And because his functions are defined by the Constitution, his duties are prescribed, and the duties cannot be delegated to anyone or any entity. So, for instance, you cannot just get there and say, well, the Auditor General is there, but I've appointed an acting Auditor General to perform the functions of a constitutional officer. It will be almost like somebody appointing somebody to act as the Chief Justice, acting Chief Justice, where we have a substantive Chief Justice. It will make no constitutional sense because the duties are prescribed by the Constitution itself, and those duties cannot be delegated to anyone by law. Third, I've mentioned that the Auditor General is not subject to anybody's control, including the board. He's not subject to the control of the board of the Audit Service, because the Audit Service is different from the Auditor General's office. And so even I've seen some litigations where the Auditor General wanted his own representation and it was denied. And I'm like, what are they doing? He cannot be forced to use the lawyer representing the Audit Service or the Audit Service Board because they are independent and different institutions or entities. What are the implications of going through all that, Samson? Number one, can the president direct the Auditor General? No. Number two, can the president exercise any control, including disciplinary control, on the Auditor General? No.
Why? Article 2.
The Auditor General.
Article 2.
Something? No.
Article 297.
The composition of the board alone.
No,
the
wait.
composition of the board alone should tell you that that's not possible because the board is a 7-member board. 5 of them are appointed by the president, and so you can't have a board that is dominated by the presidential appointees to have control over an Auditor General who is supposed to be auditing the president and his appointees.
Article 297 of the Constitution. Article 297 of the Constitution says the power of the president to appoint, therein is implied the power of the president to disappoint and to exercise disciplinary control.
Yeah, they mentioned that in the letter of July 10th. And I was shocked because it's a complete misunderstanding of an independent constitutional office. When you look at Article 297, not only does it talk about disciplinary control, but it also talks about removal. The power to appoint is the power to exercise disciplinary control and the power to remove. By this logic, they are saying that the Auditor General can be removed by the appointer. That is, I'm shocked. As an independent officer, if he misbehaves, he is removed through Article 146. The president has no power to remove the Auditor General. The president has no power to exercise any control, disciplinary, whatever, financial, administrative, managerial, none. And something I was just going to say to you that Kenya recently had an interesting case, Transparency International Kenya versus the Attorney General. It's a 2016 case. And they talk about the advice given by the Audit Service Board or Audit Advisory Board. They are equivalent of our Audit Service Board. And they were very clear. The judges there, they said institutionally and individually, the Auditor General is independent of everyone, including the president, because the president has the executive, and it's the Auditor General that is auditing them.
Okay.
By the way, this forced leave, they force you to go to leave, is something that is becoming more fashionable in Africa. It's been used in Malawi. It's been used in Kenya. In Malawi and Kenya, they try to remove Supreme Court justices through that forced retirement forced leave thing. The professionals in Kenya and Malawi, they united and pushed back because they understood the threat that poses to the whole constitutional arrangement. If the man who we have charged with auditing our financial systems can be removed, and I use removed here in quotes, because you cannot ask someone who the Constitution has given a task to proceed on leave for 167 days. That is 8 months. Who will be doing his constitutional duties during those 8 months? So it is completely unfounded.
Okay.
Now that's the...
Right.
Go ahead.
I need you to hold on there, but perhaps just answer this question quickly before I bring my other guest. We have been referred to the Labor Act, particularly Section 30 of the Labor Act, and that is cast in unambiguous terms. It says you cannot agree to relinquish your leave. So, if you did any such agreement,
the Labor Act,
it is void.
The Labor Act does not define the term of office of the Auditor General. The Labor Act provides some minimum criteria that employers must comply with. For instance, everyone has a right to a minimum of 15 days of vacation leave, and it is vacation leave. A lot of people have confused that with the leave that we accountants want people to take because of control purposes. This has nothing to do with that. This is just vacation leave. Go home, go and rest, and your employer will pay you. And then second, there is this notion of you cannot forgo or relinquish your leave by agreement. This is just something to stop employers who try to pretty much get their employees to sign contracts that limit their ability to enjoy their leaves. Let me make a couple of points.
Just a minute.
First, if you say leave accumulates, then what? When leave accumulates in regimes that have accumulated leave, and one has to look at the letter appointing him before one can know whether his leave accumulates or not. Some leaves accumulate, some do not. But for leaves that accumulate, what are the implications? The first implication is that sometimes they pay you cash. Sometimes you are not allowed to be paid cash. For instance, our Labor Act do not allow you to get cash. Two, the accumulated leave can translate into sick leave. So if you are not using that, it becomes sick leave. Three, just because you have accumulated leave does not mean your employer can force you to take all the leave, all the days that you have accumulated. When a party or an employee takes leave, it's a call for the employee, not a call for the employer. So the employee will go to the employer. I want to take 1 week leave, this and this and that. And then sometimes the employer will say, oh no, this is a busy time, so you can't.
All right, okay.
So supposing he has accumulated 167 days, nobody can tell him take all of that immediately.
Okay. You will be told by others that elsewhere there will be labor inspectors who will come to the institution and force the employer to ensure that people are taking their leaves and not, as it were, forfeiting them. Now let me hear from Fifi also.
Quickly,
let me hear from
somebody can say.
No, just hold on.
One last point.
No.
All these leave discussions, we have to understand we are talking about a constitutional officer. Okay. And so there's almost always exception for constitutional officers. Okay. Because by nature, their duties cannot be delegated to anyone.
Thank you. Now, Fifi Kwete, what's your take on what is going on with the Auditor General? And if you read the exchange of letters, it seems to be turning into something else. he seems to accuse the president of bad faith and for certain reasons that he is conducting audits that embarrasses the government and that there is evidence to that effect. And so this is clearly a way to get him out of the way. And there's a reply from the presidency that also suggests that that is not that. You deserve some rest. You should go rest. Why? Without you, can the office function? There's a deputy. Why do you want to be there to do everything by yourself? And also even that he's got the guts to impugn wrongdoing on the president.
Yeah, Samson, thank you. Samson, I would have loved to maybe hear the take of the two gentlemen in the studio. I mean, who obviously are much closer to the president, and therefore maybe let's hear what the real reason the president had to do what he did. Then maybe I would have commented, but since you asked my opinion first, no problem, I'll go ahead. Samson, to be honest, this is another low point as far as our governance architecture is concerned. And then Akufo-Addo just keeps taking it down. When one bottom is reached, then he takes it to another lower bottom. And this is actually another one. I mean, you know, earlier when we spoke about the whole issue about holding institutions being strong to be able to do what they got to do, and Kweku Baku rightly mentioned that some, should I call it, some courage need to be developed by the various officers to be able to do what is right. This actually is an example of that. And what is happening from the presidency shows you why there is such a difficulty in terms of people being able to stand and do what they've got to do. Samson, I can bet you every single money I have that if Domelovo had not taken an issue against a senior minister of an issue that threatens to expose a senior member of this government. And if Domelovo had done that same thing against what you call members of the NDC, he actually would have been a hero in the eyes of President Akufo-Addo today. And even if he accumulated 1,000 days, President Akufo-Addo would never ask him to take any accumulated leave. The problem of Mr. Domelovo is that he is not playing the ball the way, for example, Jean Mensah of the Electoral Commission is playing ball with the ruling party and President Akufo-Addo. It's as simple as that. There is nothing about being independent. It's about playing ball with the ruling party. I have appointed you and you need to play ball. And in the case of Domelovo, because the president is not the one that appointed him, he feels that's why he's not ready to play ball with him. So what do? Let's show him power. Unfortunately, in their haste to show power, they clearly showed what you call, an unbelievable level of ineptitude and incompetence.
But Fifi,
the president has sworn to be able to
Fifi, you are seeking. How do you? Fifi, you are seeking to impugn the integrity of someone without evidential basis. That the president is doing something which is untoward, and that it is because Domelovo is not willing to play ball, so to speak, like Jean Mensah, like you said. But you cannot give any evidence to show that Jean is playing any ball with the president.
So let me explain to you why it's so obvious. Why? If you read through the letter of Mr. Domelovo, he's actually explained in detail that there are so many people who are working under the president, who are in public service, some of them who are government officials, who also have so many days of leave. Why has the president not deemed it fit to write to any of those people? Why Domelovo?
This is what I mean. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. Fifi, just a minute. This is what I mean, and we can clear it nicely and proceed. You are making an accusation against the Electoral Commission chairperson who is not the subject of this discussion. I think it is fair that she is not your focus on this discussion.
Yeah, but then I'm just talking about what you call the strength of institutions in our country. And I want to submit that, in my view, the Electoral Commissioner is not independent. It is not simply by accident that every decision of the Electoral Commissioner is in total alignment with the ruling entity. It's not an accident. It's not an accident, for example, the Electoral Commissioner at IPAC, with eminent what you call personalities in this country, with CSOs, said, and her own words said, that the current voter ID will be used. And then the data would also be just moved and used. And suddenly, that movement, that position of the Electoral Commissioner has just changed, and now coinciding with the very position of the MPP, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to simply see that this is not an independent.
Well, unfortunately, we have to deal with facts and not conjecture. Can you keep to them level?
I'm not making a conjecture, I'm making a deduction. It's a deduction I'm making.
Okay, so you admit you are making deductions. You are not speaking to facts. So can we go on with Domelevo?
Exactly. So as far as Domelevo is concerned, I'm saying the real problem of Mr. Domelevo is that he actually doesn't understand the regime that we have. The regime we have is a regime that believes that if you're not going to play the ball according to the way we want, we'll show you where power lies. It's as simple as that.
Okay, what are the facts? Has Domelevo accumulated, as we know now, 167 days of leave? Fact or not?
Yeah, of course, it shows that he did, because I don't think he disputed it. But it is not the business of the president to make a determination as to whether people take leave or not. That is not his business.
In the case of the Auditor General, in the case of the Auditor General, who should exercise discipline or control over him?
No, but I would have even thought that the first thing that even the whole government architecture would have taken note of is to understand, for example, the labor laws. And I think Domelevo clearly shows, and I don't think he's the only one who has said so, other labor experts have corroborated the same position, that it is not the business of the government, or for that matter, the president, to be making that determination. He has got onerous responsibilities. He's got huge business that he ought to do. I mean, at the moment we are talking about Ghana becoming an epicenter for COVID. I mean, Ghana having difficulties with even providing PPEs for health workers. Critical health workers are dying because of this. And then you are here talking about a letter to Domelevo to go on leave, so that what? It coincides with the remaining months left. And then by the time he's come back, I mean, his term is over. And then you then have the opportunity to appoint the person you want, so that that person will be able to do your job for you, to be able to play ball according to you. I mean, it is so obvious. Unfortunately for him, in his haste, he has totally gone wrong. And he has exposed his motivation. He's shown to everybody that the whole talk about fighting corruption is just a hollow talk. There's no substance to it. Because clearly this is one individual who is showing that, yes, anybody, regardless of where you belong, whether NDC, MPP, or whatever, if it's wrong, it's wrong.
Okay.
And obviously,
hold on there. So, Nana, you may have heard the concerns from civil society so far. Will the president be able to say, Martin Amido has accumulated leave, so he should go on leave? Will the president be able to say, the Chief Justice or a Justice of the Superior Court or whatever has accumulated leave, so they should go on leave? Not the question of whether or not there is accumulated leave or there is not accumulated leave. Will the president be allowed, is he allowed to say Electoral Commission commissioners or the Shraj Commissioner or NCC boss commissioner have accumulated leave, so he is giving them the direction to go on the leave?
Well, Samson, if the matter is escalated to the presidency, then there's a problem. We are talking about the independence of a constitutional body, which is, in this case, is the Auditor General.
Right.
It is very clear. Nobody can direct the Auditor General to go and investigate Kweku Bako or to go and investigate Joy FM. It is his independence. He can choose to do auditing that inures to the benefit of the public purse. Nobody can direct him, don't go and audit this person, but go and audit that person. Nobody can do that. But what we are talking about is these conditions of service. That's the issue. And when you are appointed as Auditor General or any other body, there are conditions of service. Are you going to say that because I'm the Chief Justice of Ghana, or I am the Auditor General of Ghana, and I am independent, so I cannot go by my conditions of service? Can anybody say that?
The question is, who enforces that? Is it the president?
Exactly. So who enforces? Ordinarily, there's an issue. The board, in my view, should be the body that ensures that the conditions of service apply. But when you have a situation where there's conflict between the board and the Auditor General, and the Auditor General is stretching his independence to include his own determination of his conditions of service, and the board then refers the matter to the appointing authority, then you have this issue. And I listened to Fifi Kwete and I was laughing. There he is, sitting on a horse, saying that it means that the Auditor General is not playing ball. You see, when Fifi Kwete and people like him speak like this, then you partisan the debate, and then we are forced to bring in what happened when Fifi Kwete was a member of government. Because when Fifi Kwete was a member of government, his government did the same. And there he is sitting here 10 years later, sitting on a horse, pointing fingers at somebody. When you did the same to another Auditor General, in fact, not to another constitutional body, but the same constitutional body, the Auditor General. So for me, the issue is, how does the matter escalate to a crisis so that it has to be referred to the presidency? For me, that is the problem. And going forward, we need to deal with that matter. If the relationship between the Auditor General and the Audit Service Board was a regular relationship, this issue would not have arisen. Because, and there seems to be some confusion about independence in your work and independence as far as your conditions of service apply. And that confusion is what has brought this matter about. And who enforces your conditions of service?
Right. So that's my question. Can you imagine, hold on. The Auditor General, the Auditor General, not the Audit Service, enjoys the terms and conditions of service just as the Shraj boss, just as the EC boss, just as the justices of the Superior Court. Can you, Court of Appeal, can you imagine the president directing any of these other classes of independent, institution officers in the manner he has done to the Auditor General?
You recognize that the president did not on his own get up and order the Auditor General to take his leave.
So he can do that. He can do that to a judge.
Well,
he can do that to the EC boss.
What I'm saying is, it's a hypothetical situation. This is a real situation. I am sure if the Judicial Council, is it the Judicial Council?
Yes.
If the Judicial Council reports some conduct of the Chief Justice or any justice to the president, then they will be confronted with that. And I'm sure the president will act in the best interest of the law.
You will advise the president. You will advise the president to do that
by the law.
Okay.
If the law permits the president, and in this case, I'm sure the president believes that he's acting according to the law. And if anybody doesn't believe so, of course there's the precedent, but I don't want to partisan make it NPP and this like Fifi Kwete is trying to do. If anybody believes that the present interpretation is wrong, we can deal with it, but through the appropriate forum. But as far as the president is concerned, a matter that is escalated to him, he looks at the law and takes action that he believes is in accordance with the law.
Is the president a court or what?
No, the president. That's why his decisions and actions can be subjected to court review. But when you look at the labor law, for example, it applies to everybody. The people who the law doesn't apply to are specified in this law. It's a very, very simple law.
That's right.
When you look at Section 1 of the labor law.
Right at the preamble.
Right there, it says that
Armed Forces, Security Services,
this act
Intelligence
applies to all workers and employers, except the armed forces, the police service, the prison council. So those people who are exempted from this law are provided. The Auditor General is not provided as part of the exemption.
President is the enforcer of the Labor Act. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the president is the chief executive of the country. And so if there's a dispute and the laws allow him to, and in this case, that's why the importance of the precedent came in. In this case, there's a precedent, and nobody raised an issue. So if the Audit Service Board escalates this matter to the presidency, and the presidency says, the law allows me, and there's also a precedent.
The question your critics raise is, why do you refer to precedent when you were voted for to do things differently? So if something was deemed to be wrong, why do you use that as a justification for your conduct when that is the reason somebody may have left office?
You will clearly agree that the NDC, when the NPP under President Mills took that decision, the NDC didn't deem it to be wrong. Yes. Okay. But you see, let me make one small point. The Auditor General, this business about motives, he's saying that he believes the president is asking him to take his leave because there's a certain motivation, and that his work is embarrassing the government. This is what he himself states in his letter to the president. How is the Auditor General's work embarrassing the president or the government? You made some finding against one Minister of State, Safu Mafu. He disagrees. Not the government of Ghana, not the presidency. Safu Mafu disagrees, and he takes you to court to seek redress. How is the government, how do you apply this to say the government is embarrassed? Indeed, when the government was asked to take some action on some payment to former members of parliament, the government referred the matter to you, the Auditor General, that you think is right that we proceed on this payment. And you gave your advice to the government, and the government is abiding by your advice. And you say that this government is embarrassed by your work? Without any shred of proof?
Kuku, having listened to everybody else and starting with Professor Kukwasari's point of view, do you take the view that the Auditor General should be treated as an employee of the president?
What a question. Quite simple, but difficult to answer. He's an appointee of the president relative to the appropriate constitutional provision. That's the way I would put it. But an employee of the president perhaps sounds a bit oversimplified, and comes with a certain distortion that I'm unable to interrogate directly. He's an appointee of the president based on the appropriate provisions of the Constitution. And when he gets in there, he has a security of tenure. And he's got independence in terms of the functions that he performs. Also, political independence, that's the one that's not subject to control or direction. Then the financial independence, you see, his emoluments and those things, captured in Article 71, also gives him some independence there.
So on that score, what do you make of the argument by Professor Kukwasari that this letter just issued by the presidency is inconsistent with the law when you say the president appointing him by Article is it 267?
That's right.
Has the power to discipline him, when the president does not have the power to discipline people of the same conditions of service?
Well, I'm sure you are interpreting this proceed on leave, accumulated leave, as disciplinary measure. I'm not too sure
that's what the presidency says.
Okay, I haven't read that.
No, that's what they have said.
Disciplinary measure?
No. They say, let me read to you. Yes. That's what they say. So the presidency says in one of the paragraphs of the letters, the letter they have just issued in response to the Auditor General. And which paragraph is that? I'll read that to you right now. So they say, as you are well aware, That's in page 1, the very last paragraph. As you are well aware, the power to appoint the Auditor General is vested in the President, and the appointment is done in accordance with Article 70 of the Constitution. Per Article 297A of the Constitution, that power to appoint includes the power to, quote, exercise disciplinary control over persons holding or acting in any such office, unquote. Thus, to the extent that you fail to comply with a basic term of your appointment, such as taking annual leave, the President has the power to exercise disciplinary control over you to ensure that you comply with the terms of your appointment.
Interesting. I wouldn't put it that way, but that's a lawyer too. The President's Secretary is a lawyer. I'm sure he referred to.
Yeah, he's a lawyer.
Yes.
Yes, a lawyer.
He might have referred to some. I haven't read the text. You are just reading it to me. But you see, let me be honest with you. I think you are aware there's a case at the Supreme Court on the board and the Auditor General's, the issue of independence, the functions of the Auditor General relative to the board. That case was sent there by a gentleman called Wilberforce. And it is important, all what is happening now, it's obvious that what will happen at the Supreme Court may have a bearing on what is happening. So I think that we should be waiting for that particular process. It's a constitutional issue that has been raised.
I'll plead with you to hold on there. We'll take a last break. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. We unfortunately have very limited time now, but Kweku wants to donate the little time left for me to ask a question of Professor Kweku Asare. Prof. Asare, are you there?
Yes, Samson, I'm here.
Right. So the question is, the Auditor General is supposed to be a member of the Audit Service Board. Is that not so according to the law? If he's a member of the Audit Service Board, is he bound or he's not bound by their decisions?
A good question. And that's why I took some time to explain the architecture. There's an Auditor General's office and there's an audit service. The board is the board of the audit service. It's not the board of the Auditor General's office. So the board has no power at all to control or interfere with the work of the Auditor General in his office as the Auditor General. The audit service is the instrument by which the Auditor General performs his function. And the board oversees that. So look, if you read the Constitution, Article 189, it states very clearly the Audit Service Board will employ the staff of the audit service, but not the Auditor General, because the
special prosecutor has a similar situation. He has a board. What must he do with the board? He shouldn't take what the board says.
Because Samson, you need to understand what I'm saying. The special prosecutor doesn't have a separate office and then a prosecutor's service where there's a board of that prosecutor's service. The Auditor General is sui generis. He's a unique person. He is the commander-in-chief of the audit service, and in that role, he serves on the Audit Service Board. But he has his own office where he's neither accountable to the president nor to the board. His accountability is only to Parliament. He writes reports and he sends them to Parliament. And even then, you would see that when the report goes to Parliament, the committee that deals with his report is structured so that it's headed by the minority in Parliament. We haven't gone through all these processes so that a president can exercise disciplinary control over an Auditor General.
The Labour Act, which the presidency has referenced, says you can't forgo your leave. You are entitled to it and you can't relinquish it. The law also is clear that the Auditor General is not an exception, is not one of the institutions exempt from that law. There are those who have said that the Auditor General then may come under the public service. The public service has a policy, and the policy says unspent leave is forfeited. If you have leave and you don't take it, it's forfeited. You cannot also accrue leave more than 2 leaves. So the question being asked here is, why is the Auditor General, why is it that he did not respect the board's call on him to take his leaves, and the president has the power for the general maintenance of law? What should he do?
Something, I appreciate your playing devil's advocate, but there are certain issues that are so clear that when you play devil's advocate, it doesn't work very well. I also would call on Ghanaians. There are certain issues for which we should set aside our partisan colors. The institution of the Auditor General is so integral and so important to financial accountability. If we are unwilling to protect the Auditor General, then I don't think we are ever going to be serious about corruption. The board, I've said it many times, that the Auditor General has no control over the Auditor General.
In the letter from the presidency in response to the Auditor General, the Auditor General had taken his leave and wrote to the Chief of Staff and asking that whilst he has nominated his deputy to take over from him whilst he was on leave, the deputy should perform his functions except represent him on the board. Is that correct?
He could do that. If, for instance, somebody could deputize for him when he's on leave as the Auditor General, and he could send somebody else to represent him on the board of the audit service. He could do that.
Really?
These are minor issues that we are bringing up to basically mask the fact that this is a guy who has saved the country $1 billion.
So if he does what he did, what does that say about Section 6(5) of the Audit Service Act, which says the quorum for a meeting of the board shall be 4, including the Auditor General, or in the absence of the Auditor General, the person acting on behalf of the Auditor General?
Yeah, it says the person acting on his behalf. So he can, that's what I was saying, he can send someone to act on his behalf who is different from the person who is acting as the deputy or as the Auditor General.
How do you reconcile that logic? I'm going on leave, Professor Sari, take over from me, but don't represent me at the board. I choose somebody else to represent me at the board.
Of course, you can issue a power of attorney any way you want. I can say for my financial matters, I want people to deal
I'm
with
sorry,
them. But when it
gentlemen,
comes to my
I'm
social
sorry,
matters,
but we have run out of time. We have run out of time. I'm sorry, we have run out of time. We definitely will continue this discussion, God willing, next week, because as we know, the conglomeration of civil society organizations will be doing their press conference about this matter in the course of the week. And so this matter will not go away yet. And then the other matter we table for discussion, we should be able to take them up next week. Thank you also very much for your time. Nana Komia, Kweku Bako, Professor Kweku Asare, and Fifi Fiavi Kwete. Thank you also very much. And Dr. Srebo Kweku. Have a good afternoon. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini.